People who experienced narcissistic abuse tend to become lazy, and you're about to find out why. This isn't about shaming anyone or calling them out. It's about understanding what really happens when someone's been mentally and emotionally run through the ringer. If you've ever looked at yourself and wondered, why can't I get things done like I used to? This one's for you. Here are the 9 reasons why those abused by narcissists become lazy. Are you ready for number 1? Fear of failure or success. For narcissistic abuse victims, every step forward feels like a setup for failure. That's what it can feel like when you've been emotionally bruised by a narcissist. You might notice yourself procrastinating, putting things off, or even avoiding goals altogether. Deep down, your nervous system has linked effort with danger. When narcissists constantly criticize or mock your achievements, your brain learns to equate trying with trauma. Dr. Nicole LePera, author of How to Do the Work, explains, when we experience chronic invalidation, we begin to internalize the belief that failure is inevitable or that success will come at a cost. So you freeze, stuck between the fear of failing and the fear of what success might trigger: jealousy, sabotage, or even more emotional chaos. Let's talk about number 2, executive dysfunction. Have you ever felt like your brain has a million tabs open, but none of them are loading? When you've been abused by a narcissist, your brain goes into survival mode. The trauma messes with your prefrontal cortex, which is the part that helps you plan, focus, and make decisions. So when you can't start a task or finish one, it's due to a brain short circuit. Dr. Janina Fisher, in her book, Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors, explains that executive functions are compromised by chronic trauma because the brain learns to prioritize survival over everything else. Your mind is trying to heal while still dodging emotional landmines, which is why you can't cross even one task on your to-do list. Let's move on to number 3, no safe space to recharge. Living with a narcissist is like running on fumes 24/7. You're constantly alert, always anticipating the next blow-up or silent treatment. That kind of environment doesn't just wear you out, but also wires your body to stay in survival mode. And when you finally escape, your body crashes like a phone on 1% battery that never got the chance to charge. As trauma expert Dr. Gabor Mate puts it in his book, The Myth of Normal, rest isn't laziness. It's recovery from a nervous system that's been under siege. So, when you feel like you're doing nothing but still feel exhausted, it's your body finally telling you to just pause and breathe for once. You're trying to heal from years of emotional exhaustion in a space that never gave you permission to rest. Now, let's continue to number 4, paralysis by perfectionism. You were probably trained to believe that anything less than flawless would lead to criticism, mockery, or outright rejection. Over time, that pressure wires your brain to see mistakes as dangerous. So now, even simple tasks feel like walking a tightrope with no safety net. Clinical psychologist Dr. Margaret Rutherford, author of Perfectly Hidden Depression, explains that perfectionism is often a shield used to protect oneself from deep emotional pain or fear of judgment. You end up stuck, not because you don't care, but because doing something imperfectly feels like setting yourself up to be hurt again. Your nervous system is bracing for impact every time you try. That constant tension wears you down before you even begin. Healing means learning it's safe to try, safe to mess up, and still be worthy of love and acceptance. You shouldn't miss number 5, identity confusion and loss of drive. How do you chase a dream when you don't even know who you are anymore? That's what happens when narcissistic abuse chips away at your identity little by little. You spent so much time walking on eggshells, molding yourself to please the narcissists, that eventually you forgot who you are. Your wants, goals, and personality were all buried under layers of self-doubt and survival habits. And when the dust finally settles, you're left staring at a blank canvas because you've forgotten what you wanted to paint in the first place. Psychologist Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, who specializes in narcissistic abuse, notes that victims often experience identity disturbance, where the sense of self becomes fragmented or unclear. So, no wonder your motivation went low. How can you feel driven when you don't know what direction you're even supposed to go? Are you still up for number 6? Subconscious sabotage. The narcissist taught you that your growth threatens relationships. Every time you shined, they sulked, guilt-tripped, or made you feel selfish. So now, part of you stalls, not because you don't want success, but because deep down, you've linked it with rejection. Psychologist Dr. Margaret Paul, co-creator of Inner Bonding, says, "We often sabotage our success to maintain the illusion of connection, even if that connection is toxic. It's like your mind is hitting the brakes to protect you from being too much for others. You're fighting invisible strings that tied love to shrinking yourself. Awareness is exactly where your healing begins. The more you notice these patterns, the more power you have to choose healing over guilt." Let's keep it moving to number 7, learned helplessness. Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, it's never enough? If you've been abused by a narcissist, you probably know this feeling too well. Over time, you start to believe that your efforts won't change anything, so why bother trying? That's called learned helplessness, a term coined by psychologist Martin Seligman. And it's what happens when you're constantly criticized, controlled, or made to feel powerless. Narcissists have a way of making you feel like you're always wrong, always falling short, and eventually you stop trying. You've been trained to believe your actions don't matter. In her book, The Emotionally Absent Mother, Jasmine Lee Corey explains how abuse survivors often internalize this helplessness, leading to a freeze response that looks like laziness to outsiders. Many narcissistic abuse survivors say they spent months or years just trying to get out of bed because they were mentally and emotionally paralyzed. Here comes number 8, depression and apathy. If you've lived through narcissistic abuse, chances are you've felt yourself slowly slipping into a peak of depression and apathy. Your body is still here, but your motivation packed up and left the moment your self-worth was crushed. Narcissists have a way of draining your energy by making you feel invisible or never good enough. Over time, your brain stops releasing the feel-good chemicals that drive action, and you just go numb. Clinical psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula, in her book, Should I Stay or Should I Go?, explains how narcissistic abuse leads to emotional flatlining, where survivors describe feeling like zombies, awake but not truly living. Real survivors on forums like Reddit's r narcissistic abuse often share how they'd sit in the same clothes for days, not because they didn't want to move, but because they felt emotionally paralyzed. Depression wrapped around you like a heavy blanket, and apathy moved in when hope walked out. This isn't your fault. It's your nervous system waving a white flag after years of emotional war. Finally, we're down to number 9, fear of independence. If you've been abused by a narcissist, the idea of being independent can feel downright terrifying. Over time, the narcissist chips away at your confidence, making you believe that you can't do anything on your own. They have made you doubt your choices, your instincts, even your worth. So now, the thought of stepping out and doing something for yourself feels risky, overwhelming, and unsafe. In her book, The Gift of Fear, trauma expert Gavin de Becker writes that fear is not just about danger, but also about conditioning. You were conditioned to believe that being self-sufficient would lead to punishment, rejection, or more emotional pain. So you froze, not out of choice, but because your nervous system associated independence with danger. You're not weak. Your mind just learned to equate survival with staying small and dependent. So if you've been feeling lazy, unmotivated, or like you just can't get it together, don't beat yourself up. You've been in survival mode for so long, your brain and body are just trying to catch their breath. Give yourself some grace. Rest isn't weakness. It's recovery from battles no one else could see.